Some have quoted my jokes and memes saying God surely wasn't in it. Some said when Nelson Chamisa said God did, but maybe God didn't. There's so many questions flying around, uncertainty, and maybe today after this interview, you have all those questions and doubts answered. Welcome to yet another episode of The Big Talk with your hostess, Marvelous Tinembo Chibagidi. And today I'm joined by the CCC spokesperson, Promise Phiri. I hope I said his last name right. I usually do not like saying people's last names and names wrong. Promise, welcome to The Big Talk.
Thank you, my good sister.
And we know you're a busy guy, and you've been making waves for years in the civic society and the political field. So who exactly, before we delve into our interview, who exactly is Promise?
Well, Promise Phiri is an activist. I like to call myself a social entrepreneur.
Okay.
I'm very concerned with the issues of human rights, the social well-being of the generality of our people, in particular those that are underprivileged, lack opportunity, and lack support. And throughout my life, I've stood on behalf of that category
of people. Yeah.
And as you correctly mentioned, I come from civil society. I'm well versed with of the things that are being done in places like these ones.
Okay.
Critical spaces, indeed, in terms of, giving the citizen a voice and giving the citizens the power that they are unaware that they have.
Okay.
Just harnessing that power and ensuring that the citizens are able to demand what is rightfully theirs. As fate would have it, I joined politics, again in pursuit of that social justice on behalf of the majority of our people. And I happen to be national spokesperson of the Citizens Coalition for Change, appointed by President Nelson Chamisa prior to his resignation.
Okay. You mentioned how you also, in your position in the civic space and also joining politics, how the mandate is to alert, or rather raise awareness that people know of a certain power that they have. But coming from maybe a media point of view, we've seen how Zimbabweans, especially when we take it to the street, Zimbabweans are a bit skeptical, I don't want to use the word scared, to respond to questions, to do even with just their well-being, not necessarily comment on any political issue, but maybe comment on how they've been faring with maybe the price increases which started maybe when the year started. Why do you think that maybe Zimbabweans, despite people like you and other people in the civic space and the political space, are letting people know that they do have power as ordinary or general citizens, but they still hold back in voicing out their concerns? What do you think is the force behind that? Why are people skeptical, and why are some even scared to raise their voices or their concerns where their well-being is concerned?
Well, allow me to just second guess you and say that there are a number of factors. I wouldn't say that the people of Zimbabwe are afraid or scared to exercise their power. Historically, you know that people of Zimbabwe have converged at certain epochal political moments in our country and exercised that power, from the liberation struggle to independence and electing the leaders that they wanted at that time. And from 1997 to around 2000, 2001, we did see the people of Zimbabwe coming together through mass actions, stairways and strikes led by the then Secretary General of the ZCTU, Morgan Tsvangirai, and others.
Yeah.
And at that point, we see the emergence of the Movement for Democratic Change as a voice of convergence and an expression of that power by the people of Zimbabwe. And you see the regime responding differently. Once that power begins to accumulate and gather momentum, the regime starts to take desperate measures to try and thwart the voice of the people. And that has been the pattern, whereby the regime he has made sure that the political and social environment is not conducive or is dangerous for that kind of exercise of power that we are discussing. Nevertheless, I think that the people have continued to show resilience through the 2018 elections. They voted overwhelmingly for the opposition, and again in 2023, you saw again a massive vote for the opposition. The highlight of the 2018 elections was the shooting of civilians, the citizens who wanted to demand an accurate and true outcome of the elections. And we saw soldiers coming onto the streets to shoot with live ammunition citizens, and a couple of people died in that episode. But you see that the people of Zimbabwe, they continue, they are determined to see the change that this country requires. And you also see their intelligence in adapting and evading the combative environment and using other smarter ways to confront the regime. As we speak, a lot is happening in the country. The people are very aware of who their leaders are, and the people are very aware of what they want. It is how to get there which may be complex, but I can assure you that our people are resilient, they are courageous, they are peace-loving, and they are determined to ensure that the Zimbabwe that we have is not the Zimbabwe that we deserve. And we need to put our heads together as citizens of this country with the primary rights towards this country, to ensure that we uplift our country and get the life that we deserve, but more importantly, set the stage for generations to come to have a better and a greater Zimbabwe.
Okay, thank you, Promise. Maybe I'll come back to that, because when you mentioned how Zimbabweans are a peace-loving nation, I remember so many times we've had people make jokes of our country, of our citizens, saying, in our love for peace, this is how we are then deprived of our different rights, even the rights to of our different rights by the ruling party, which has been there for the last 4 decades. But also, then you look at maybe the Islamic awakening, where people really took it to the street. And so, are we that peace-loving, or like I alluded when we started the conversation, are we that peace-loving, or maybe there's that complexity which you mentioned in the citizens of Zimbabwe getting to where they want, because they're, like you mentioned, that they're actually aware of that this is not the country that they want, or the Zimbabwe that maybe their ancestors and forefathers fought for. So are we intelligent, and is our peace-loving stopping us from even being radicals and maybe going the Islamic awakening route? Or is it we're working on maybe smarter, intelligent ways of maybe people getting the Zimbabwe that they want?
No, you see, what happens is that contexts are always different. And as a political scientist or a political activist, you should be able to understand the different contexts and the complexities that they present in different circumstances.
Okay.
I'm a student of the Arab Spring. I've studied protests at a very, very high level. I understand protests. And what I've learned, one of the things that I've learned is that the context is always important in any protest situation that happens. And Zimbabwe is a totally different context, and as well as the region in which it is located, which is Southern Africa, as compared to the Middle East, for example.
Okay.
We have a totally different political cultures, historical struggles are different, and also some of the motivations. If you look, for example, in the Middle East, some of the motivating factors are religious, and that
religion comes, radicalism increases.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I would say that I don't want to it's very easy to be persuaded to think that our people are afraid, especially if you look at the issue from the surface. But if you make a deeper inquiry, you realize that it's not really that the people are afraid. It's just the way that our people are and the means that they've decided to rely on to achieve this goal. You remember some years ago, we were leading Tajamuka. Tajamuka says Chigile campaign.
Yeah, well.
I mean, you did see the courage and the resilience, especially of young people, coming in to confront the regime and getting what they wanted to get at that point in time. But you see, the protests of that magnitude cannot be engineered by an individual. They cannot be engineered by mobilization in the sense that we know it. They are epochal moments. There comes a time, a historical time, in any political evolution of any society where, for various reasons and circumstances, various groups converge to say enough is enough. And we are always warning the regime that that time is around the corner, where the people of Zimbabwe, when you see yourself still having to mobilize people, they are not yet angry.
Okay.
When they draw the line in the sand on their own, even the mobilizers want to know what happened. The people will do what they have to do, and the leaders will be there now, actually to try and restrain the people. So those moments have come before in the country. You saw during the Tajamuka days, and those moments cannot be discounted, especially in the context of what we are seeing, the so-called structured currency, which is really, a pilferage facility by the regime, where they are going to print fictitious numbers, not even money, fictitious numbers on bank accounts, and go and get US dollars for free at the black market and share among themselves at the expense of the generality of the people of Zimbabwe. And many other things. I can speak about so many transgressions that this regime is responsible for. And the accumulation of all those transgressions may lead to a situation that they may not be able to contain.
Okay. There you have it. The Triple C national spokesperson is saying that it's easy to accuse the generality of the Zimbabwean population as people who are scared to maybe take it to the streets or be radical about protesting for change. But he's saying we also need to consider things like context before we then line it out that Zimbabweans are scared to voice out their needs and also their opinions. So there's this big question which has been on social media. I could count the number of tweets, especially on X. I can count the number of posts on X which have these allegations / accusations or statements calling you, Promise Mkonanzi, a state agent or / a CIO. So what is your response to these allegations? Because they've been flying all over social media for the longest time. So maybe right now, let's settle this, finish and clear. How do you respond to those allegations, Promise?
My responsibility is very simple. I know Pochumono is one of the proponents of that narrative. And at the time when he started it, he promised that he was going to produce
he's going to bring receipts.
Impeccable evidence, V11, receipts as you call them, to the public.
Okay.
And we said it's fine. You have the opportunity, you have the platform. Can you present the evidence that you have before the people of Zimbabwe so that they know? I think it has been...
Maybe he's got your ID. Maybe he's got a photo of you.
Some AI.
Your work ID for the state security that he has somewhere.
No, they will never have that. So, like I said at the outset of this conversation, I was born, bred and raised in an environment that suffered serious consequences from the regime. My grandparents that I grew up with There was my grandfather was a former British South Africa police, sort of Rhodesian police officer.
Okay.
So just after the war, he still had his Land Rover as part of the retirement. And at the start of the Gukurahundi, he was one of the main targets because of his history, having been in the security sector.
Okay.
As well as being Ndebele and being ZAP, you know. So he was a target of the regime, and several times they came to our homestead, they wanted to assassinate him, and he was not in position. At least more than 3 times. They harassed my grandmother. He was also saved by people who had worked with him before. And so on. So that's the context of my upbringing. So when I grew up, I always knew that ZANU-PF was the enemy. To me personally, and to the broader society. And then when I came to university, it was even emboldened. You know, when you get to university, you start to learn, you become literate. You see student leaders, be older student leaders, they come there, they indoctrinate you with the spirit of the revolution, so to speak. So in the students' movement, traditionally, is an opposition or a civic society space.
Okay.
This is where I grew up, into civil society, into the opposition. If I had wanted to be a CIO, I think I would have been a CIO as early back as my days in the students' movement, as early days as in my days in the youth assembly of the MDC or in Tajamuka. It wasn't the case. It is not the case. It will never be the case. There will never be a time in my life, and put this on record,
Okay.
that I will be in any way a part and parcel of ZANU-PF.
Okay, so there you have it. In case you had further questions of where Promise stands when it comes to the allegations of him being a state agent or /CIO, he said that if ever it was to happen, then maybe he'd have done it during his student days. And given his experience being of the Ndebele tribe, he says, he's always known that ZANU-PF was the enemy. So being a state agent is not on his agenda and will never be on his.
My conscience is clean.
His conscience is clean.
My heart is clean.
So if anyone has the receipts and you're watching this interview, which go against what Promise has just said with regards to the allegations of him being a state agent, please feel free to DM us, produce the receipts. Please, we need the receipts, the V11s, to crush his response if we are to maintain the allegation that Promise is a state agent. Moving right along, analysts have said that we have an opposition crisis, and this is after the resignation of former CCC President Nelson Chamisa, and it is being said that now CCC is a dead entity. So maybe you could highlight and tell our viewers what exactly is going on with the Citizens Coalition for Change.
Okay. I want to start by saying that there was no crisis in CCC. There were no challenges. Obviously, there would be challenges in any organization.
I was about to say, are you sure there were no challenges?
There were no significant challenges as to cause significant problems within the party. Problems only began when ZANU-PF, who are the authors and sponsors of impositors and imposters like Senkezo Chala, came in, and they bring this guy from Norway. They allow him, or they assist him to cause the havoc that he caused in the main opposition party in Zimbabwe, recalling our MPs, recalling our councillors against the position of the party. As far as we are concerned, I had another interview yesterday and I said, as far as we are concerned, CCC has never recalled anybody. And all these people that were unlawfully recalled have never ceased to be members of our party. And today, if we were to be given the opportunity, we would still restore them in their correct positions. because that's the position of our party. So that's where the problems start. And you then get some people within the opposition getting bought into the Chabang idea, or using the Chabang to settle their personal scores with President Chamisa or with other leaders in the party. And that created a lot of problems.
Okay.
So in the end, it was Chabang advancing the agenda of ZANU-PF to attain a 2/3 majority in parliament, unlawfully.
Okay.
Presumably to remove a 2/3 two-term limit and allow Mr. Mnangagwa to have a third term, or alternatively to extend his term, his term from 2023 to 2030 instead of 2028. So this is a clear agenda of ZANU-PF to ensure that the numbers they need in parliament to pursue this goal that I've just described to you. Why am I telling you all this information? I want you and the viewers to understand that the problems that the CCC faced were a result of the sponsorship and authorship of ZANU-PF. They were not internal problems. Much as the party had its own internal problems, like any other organization, they were still contained within the party. And there were systems and avenues and platforms to get to resolve all those issues internally. And the party, by the way, was on its way to its inaugural historical convention, where we're now going to regularize our leadership and allow the people to elect, so to speak, or to input into the leaders that they wanted to occupy certain positions. That was the path, and that was the plan of the party, until we were torpedoed by the regime, represented by Sengiso Chabang and others. Now, when all that was done, it then led to the resignation of President Nelson Chamisa. Many have questioned the rationality of his resignation. But what I can explain to you is that it was possibly one of the most strategic decisions ever taken. And I can see that you have a bit of shock in your...
I guess I need to work on my poker face.
Yeah. So, you see, when you have that light as a target,
yes,
everybody's going to point their gun at that
at the light.
But when you remove that light, where are they going to point their guns to?
Either among themselves, or they're just going to give up because they have no targets.
So that's why you saw the infuriation when President Chamisa stepped aside.
Okay.
He stepped aside for strategic reasons, I told you. And he clearly stated in his letters, I have resigned from CCC, but I have not resigned from politics. I have not abandoned you. I think that was a clear message. And it's a message that we want to continue to remind of the people of Zimbabwe that President Chamisa resigned from the CCC, not from politics. And he has not abandoned you.
But maybe this is hypothetical, maybe coming from the supporters, the people who are rallying behind CCC, maybe they are yet to understand the game plan since the resignation, because they were following a leader with a political party. And the moment he then leaves, whilst they still had questions of what is the next step after the 2023 elections, maybe I'm thinking that is where like you called it, infuriation from them, because now they're thinking, so who exactly are we following now that he's left CCC? Are we just following a leader without a party, or does he have a party in the making and has a different game plan? So I think people they're in limbo, if I might say, for lack of a better, they're in limbo, wondering, so Okay, if you say God's in it, when is God going? When is this God of yours who called you to this politics and to lead us going to hear our prayer and our supplications that we're sending over to the men up high? Maybe that's where the infuriation and anger is coming from.
Concept. If as a Christian or a believer, we say that God's appointed time is always the best time. And God works in very mysterious ways. To God, to you and me, 1 + 1 is 2. To God it may not. So the God aspect is very central, not just to Christians, even other people who have other religions. At the end of the day, there's a general acknowledgement that there's
a higher power,
a higher power, which is God. The people may differ on how to get to God, or how to praise God, or how to worship God, but there is a God. And there is a general consensus, in particular in Zimbabwe, that in one way or the other, people recognize the presence of a higher power. And that is the God that we describe, the God of everyone. So, in my own understanding, limited understanding of God, what I can tell is that God's appointed time is always the best time. And the way God reaches his decisions, or look at what happened in Senegal. It's God in one way or the other. That's God's plan. And God always has mysterious ways of fulfilling his plans. Coming back to the reality that we are in here in Zimbabwe, the CCC, I was still trying to explain to you. So when President Chamisa strategically stepped aside, we then had to sit down and say, how do we stabilize the CCC? How do we protect what it has? You know, as you said, the people of Zimbabwe invested their own in CCC by voting for CCC councillors, CCC MPs, and CCC presidential candidate. And we said we can't just abandon this investment by the people of Zimbabwe. How then do we stabilize it? How do we preserve it? And how do we prepare or evolve it towards, contributing to the new dispensation within the opposition politics? So that is the trajectory.
I was about to say the new dispensation, and you said of the opposition.
Yes, within the opposition.
Okay.
So we then put together some form of a tactical interim leadership of the CCC, which is, we've got an administrative committee chaired by Senator James and Timber. It's more or less like a curatorship of the CCC.
Okay.
Those who understand curatorship will understand the implications of my use of that word. So that is ongoing. It has its own processes. We've given our parliamentarians a parliamentary program. We've given our councillors a program for local authorities. And we'll continue to ensure that what the people of Zimbabwe voted for is not lost by preserving the liberated zones, so to speak, the spaces that were won by the opposition. On the other hand, before I go to the next, within that context, one of the things that many people miss is that the CCC is a political vehicle for electoral processes, right?
Yes.
But it is not the entirety of the democratic movement. It is not the sum total of the democratic movement. The democratic movement is made up of many components, including civil society. Progressive civil society is part of the democratic movement. Progressive students' union, trade unions, informal sector, and others, and the general, people in their various pockets and facets. That makes up the democratic movement. So, in our view, to say that President Chamisa was leader of the CCC was actually to limit his leadership. we were limiting his leadership. The democratic movement transcends the Triple C. It's beyond the Triple C. So part of the strategic logic is that if the democratic movement is much broader than the Triple C, and because this leader, the key leader within that broader movement, has become the target because of the Triple C, if you can step aside and provide leadership on a broader and more open space, you could actually have more impact and spread much larger.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's very confusing, but
no, it's not confusing. I just have, but it's okay. Yeah. Go on.
But as events unfold in the not so distant future, you're then going to understand.
It will make sense. Okay.
So we are preserving what we want, what the people of Zimbabwe invested in within the Triple C. But we are also rebuilding and reinventing and reworking the bigger space.
Okay.
Yeah. When the time comes, they will then have to say, how do we merge everything together into the new?
Okay, and to the new opposition regime. Because when you then just say new regime, then we'll get confused where Promise's loyalty, where your loyalty lies.
It will seem like
exactly now, exactly, because now we'll take that clip from social and we'll now post it on social media, and these are the receipts that we'll be giving you. And okay, you've given us an in-depth explanation of that there's not necessarily an opposition crisis, and you mentioned the interim leadership and the curatorship, like you've mentioned, with Chamisa and Timber at the top of it all. But word on the street, on the grapevine, because I cannot say that these were statements from Triple C, from you as the spokesperson, says there are factions within Triple C, there are divisions of people who are in support of Timber, and there are also the Chamisa loyalists, who some claim that are not in support of this interim leadership. So could we say that maybe there is trouble in paradise for Triple C since the exit of the leader Nelson Chamisa, or maybe all is well at home?
Well, like I said, in any organization or any grouping, there will be issues and there will be challenges. But generally speaking, I am not aware of any serious problem with the leadership that is there. I'm part of that leadership actually. We have been conducting business, ensuring that our MPs have a program, ensuring that our councillors have a program, ensuring that the ship is stabilized and the movement is protected. Because the way vouchers and opportunists will try to jump in, and remember Ushman Ngube saying is now the president, and so on. All those things, of course, they suffered a natural death because they don't have the support of the people. So, as we speak, effectively, there is only one Triple C that they've just described. The rest is kind of fizzled out. And this Triple C that is there is the real Triple C which President Nelson Chamisa resigned from. That's what I can say. Okay.
And we've seen resignations in solidarity with the former president and leader of the Citizens Coalition for Change. So can we then say, when you're standing from the outside, people will say that the ones who resigned in solidarity with Nelson Chamisa are for Nelson Chamisa, pro Nelson Chamisa, and might then say that those who stayed and did not resign or exit are anti-Chamisa. Maybe you could give us a comment on that, because there's some who were saying we stand in solidarity. You know how even in the media people will say, I stand with Taizamara, I stand when journalists are arrested. journalism is not a crime. I stand with so and so. I stand with, like even when Blessed was arrested, I stand with Blessed. That's solidarity. And if we find one of our own not standing in solidarity, we might have questions. Maybe they did not put it out there on social media, but sometimes we'll then have questions. So I think that's the context I'm trying to come from, where someone will say, those who did it in solidarity are pro Nelson Chamisa, and those who did not, or those who stayed, are anti-Chamisa.
Well, that's not a good yardstick to measure who is for President Chamisa and who is not. Because, like I said, we've got MPs who were elected and councillors. And the question is, should we just give that to ZANU, give away so easily to ZANU in order to demonstrate our loyalty to President Chamisa? Or we can still remain loyal and supportive of President Chamisa while we protect and preserve these spaces and push an agenda in Parliament and stop certain agendas in Parliament. For example, the one party, the third term thing, or the extension of Mnangagwa's term. We would need a voice in Parliament to
speak against that.
So while from a logical point of view, unless we are saying we want to step down everyone, then we force there's kind of a new general election. Otherwise, we would have to be more strategic and say, okay, should we have 4 or 5 MPs resigning, or we can keep our MPs there, and also define that as a site of struggle in its own, and then we can then agree and decide on how we're going to use that site of struggle, be it Parliament or local authorities, rather than say those that are there are no longer with President Chamisa.
Okay.
I remain this national spokesperson of
for Triple C.
But I stand with President Nelson Chamisa. I've stood with him and I'll continue to stand with him.
Okay. You've answered my question when it comes to the being pro with standing in solidarity with Nelson Chamisa, but being pro Chamisa or being anti-Chamisa. But my other question now comes, we've seen in my very few decades on this earth and in being a citizen of Zimbabwe, I've seen when MDC started within the new millennium, and then when being MDCT and everything else that's been happening in the opposition space, could the logic or your strategy of saying you preserve and maintain what the people who went to the booth voted for when you had the Triple C MPs, the Triple C councillors, be as strong as something that could actually topple or have the ruling party shaken their boots? Because from where we are standing, or where I am standing as Tinerimbo, I've seen so many strategies come through, and we've seen how they trash that. We definitely know that their strategy is never God is in it. Their strategy it's like Moses and Pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's the battle between Zim opposition and the ruling party. So do you think that your strategies are watertight to maybe somehow even have these people move an inch from their ways? Or maybe with the likes of Sengezo Chabangu, we simply have the opposition feeding into the norm of the ruling party, which is necessarily intimidation.
No, Sengezo Chabangu is not opposition.
Well, he's self-acclaimed. Let me say he's self-acclaimed opposition.
Look, this is not an easy task. Fighting ZANU is not an easy task, and it's easy for critics to critique. Some of us are used to it. We absorb criticism every day. But you see, there were so many people who said, we can lead, we can do this, we can do that. President Chamisa stepped aside. They failed to step up to the plate. Because it's not an easy thing. And don't underestimate the achievements of the CCC in 2023. And the strategy, we used what was called Mgwazo,
Okay.
which was an underground mobilization strategy, and which led to the performance that you saw the party do. Going by ZEC's figures, by ZEC's cooked figures, we had the highest vote share in the history of the opposition. If our party had not been infiltrated and destabilized and contaminated, we would have had the highest share of the political fund in the history of the opposition. And of course, they make sure that the presidential elections, true results are never known, and they announce what they wanted to announce. But we believe that the margin of the president was even larger. So it is that what it shows you is that it's possible to defeat this regime, and it is being defeated. But the question is to say, how do we ensure the transfer of power?
Okay.
It's not so much about saying, are we able to mobilize or access that area or that area? Yes, it's difficult. Yes, the regime will do what it does best, as you say. But clever strategies will work. And one of the experiences that I've just described to you was the Mgwazo program.
Okay.
It's what brought about the result that we saw. And also we have the largest spread in the history of the opposition than before. We've won more areas, including some peri-urban areas, some totally urban areas were penetrated at this time, at this point in time. Seke constituency,
Yes, sir.
Jimba East, Bay Bridge, is it Bay Bridge South or something? They were won for the first time since 1980.
You still failed to penetrate where I come from.
Where do you come from?
Zumba Maramba Pfuma.
Those ones will be the last ones.
Okay.
Again, you see the vote there is coming up, and the area now in the early 2000s you could not even go there, but now you can go there. You can see some people wearing opposition regalia. People can now talk about the opposition. There is social media and many other tools to get into those kind of areas.
Okay.
So don't worry, your area will be, maybe one day you'll be the member of parliament for that area.
An opposition member of parliament.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you don't want my relatives to be watching this, and also, I'm just a journalist, so I am neither nor.
Oh.
I'm just here to do my job. I'm playing. Okay, so with that being said, I'm sure, like as we finish off this conversation, you cleared on how that in the history of opposition you had the largest penetration and within the country, and
it's
even
quite paradoxical because critics will say the party is not organized, the party does not have structures, the party is weak. But when you look at the results, going by ZEC figures themselves, you actually realize that no, the strategy went. What is the word? The formlessness of the party
somehow brought form.
Okay. And also it gave a lot of confusion to the regime. Because in the past, they knew that there's a district chairman there. If we buy that one, there's the provincial secretary there. We get that one, we demobilize the party. So, but it went very well. It's not that the party was going to continue like that. Like I said, we wanted to go to a convention and put up the leadership. But for purposes of the 2023 elections, that was the strategy.
Okay. And now that I'm sure if you've got any further questions, please put them in the comments, and then we'll then bring Promise back again to answer those questions and bring us clarity. Yes, and bring us clarification. And if you've got any receipts, put them in the comment section or DM us, send us email so that we bring Promise back again for clarification. And so there's the CCC, all right? And then there's talk of the Blue Movement. So for clarity purposes, Is this a one? Because I'll quote you, you said Chamisa was the target. And then he had to remove himself as the target, right, from CCC. Now, and so such that now those who were targeting Chamisa had no target because he was not with CCC anymore. So now there's
also CCC is not the alpha and omega.
It's not the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
The space, it's just a part
of the broader plan.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. With that also being clarified. So how does the Blue Movement and the Citizens Coalition merge, or how is the Zimbabwean out there who was following and rallying behind the Citizens Coalition for Change is to take the both entities? Because I'm not sure if I can call the Blue Movement a party, or it's still something which is just a movement. So how does a Zimbabwean citizen who was rallying behind Nelson Chamisa in CCC, but is still a staunch Citizens Coalition for Change supporter, how are they to take the Blue Movement and the Citizens Coalition for Change?
There's no confusion and there's no contradiction. These are progressive forces. While the CCC will never be the same without President Nelson Chamisa, it remains a progressive force. It remains a part of the democratic movement. And so does the Blue Movement, for lack of a better term. So it's also a progressive movement. It's there has to be some complementarity, but as well as some succession in the process between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that answers the question, but I hear you that there has to be, one has to complement the other, or they both have to complement each other, and somehow at some point there has to be succession between the two. Yeah. Okay, I'm sure as Zimbabweans,
one sun shall set and the other shall rise.
Okay, and that will, I'm sure it's after that that quote, it's a good time to actually end the session, to say that one sun will set and the other sun will rise. Not sure in this very moment that if it's the Blue Movement or it's the CCC, and I don't know why I decided to wear a blue shirt to this interview today. Thank you, Promise, but just for disclaimer, I just picked a blue shirt in my wardrobe today. I'm not standing, it's not in support or in solidarity with anyone. So Promise, in your closing remarks, what would you like to say to our viewers and the fans, the supporters, the people rallying behind the Citizens Coalition for Change? And I'm sure you also have something for the critics. You maybe have something for Hoppo as well, which you mentioned. I'm joking. But what would you want to say to the people who have been rallying behind the Citizens Coalition for Change and the critics out there, and some who are still in limbo and waiting to understand if these strategies that CCC has will have them actually believing and saying, just as there was hope for Israel, maybe there is hope for Zimbabwe? Because I'm thinking, if, say you are a wife and you're saying to your husband, Shumba, pano apa sisina fees yula kubhadharwa and magetsi ari kupera apa 10, and he simply says, "Ndichaita plan." And then you ask, what exactly is the plan? And then he doesn't give you the plan. It doesn't give much hope to me as a wife. I'll simply, maybe in the end, I end up making my own. Maybe in the end, I'll be making my own plan because I don't. Would he rather lie?
Make up a plan.
You don't want me to talk about what men would rather do on screen, Promise, please. The men will come fighting for me. So, okay. So I'm just saying, what would you say to those people who've been rallying behind CCC and who have their hope, saying, as there was hope for Israel, maybe there is hope for Zimbabwe, despite the talk around them is saying that there are no structures, there's no form, there's no leadership anymore. Well, Chamisa is dead, it's gone, and we've got an opposition crisis. There's a lot that's coming your way as CCC. Yeah. What would you say to our viewers out there?
Okay, what I want to say is that the people must not lose hope. And they should not, consume the propaganda that the opposition is dead. No, the opposition is not dead. The opposition is going through a metamorphosis. to adapt.
Spoken like a true scholar. Okay, go on, Promise.
To the combative environment in the country. And as I said at the start, President Nelson Chamisa is not resigned from politics. He remains the political compass of the political direction of the opposition in Zimbabwe. And the people of Zimbabwe must not, worry about the details of too many things. I know people want clarity. There will be clarity at the appropriate time. But I've explained that all these pieces are being brought together to create a broader and stronger and more adaptive political formation. It may not necessarily be a political party in the traditional sense that we know, but it will be a flexible and adaptable vehicle which will be adaptive and resistant to the challenges that we've faced in the past. We've learned a lot, we continue to learn, and we are going to continue to evolve the opposition until we get where we want to get. But without evolution, we will not be able to achieve what we want to achieve. We must be the change that we preach. And these changes and evolutions, internal evolutions of the opposition, are necessary in order to create the vehicle that will be able to take the regime to the bottom.
Okay. So Promise is saying that the strategies and the form and the plans that they have will be the ones that are to take the regime to the bottom and maybe bring hope again for those who've been following the Citizens Coalition for Change and Nelson Chamisa, hoping that they are the ones who are to bring change to Zimbabweans. You're watching another episode of The Big Talk with me, your hostess, Marvelous Tenembo Chibagidi. Until the next episode, from me and Promise, it's goodbye for now.